So now we know how to write some code which updates our user interface. That's all well and good, but at the moment we can only run that code in the viewDidLoad method, so we can only do it at the start of the app. Generally, we're going to want to have some kind of interaction, so an ideal start to that would be to run this code and update the label text whenever this button here is tapped. So how do we do that? It's actually amazingly simple. We select our button, and then just like we did with the label, we control drag. It doesn't matter whether we put it above or below the label IB outlet, but it does have to be outside the viewDidLoad method here. And this time, instead of an outlet which just connects the object with the code, we want to make it an action. And what that will do is create a chunk of code that will run every time this button is pressed. So we can call it again whatever we like, but I'm going to go for button pressed, and we don't need to worry about type. Event is worth having a quick look at, because with buttons there's all sorts of different interactions that you can do, and you can imagine what most of these mean, but 9 times out of 10 we're going to want this one. So touch up inside, essentially that means that the button has been pressed because the user has released their finger inside the button. So this will then create a chunk of code that will allow us to do something when the button is tapped. Don't need to worry about arguments. So let's click connect. And there we go. I'll just tidy that up slightly. And you can see that it looks a little bit different to what we had before. It's an IB action rather than an IB outlet. And more importantly, we've got these curly brackets which allow us to put some code in which will run every time the button is tapped. So here's a mini challenge for you. Can you make it so that instead of updating the label when the app is run, we update the label when the button is tapped? Give it a go. I hope you managed it. All it is a matter of moving this line of code, which is the code that updates the label, and I'm going to use Command X to cut it from there and Command V to paste it in there. I could also have used edit, cut and paste if you don't like your keyboard shortcuts. And that's it. So now every time the button is pressed, the label will be updated to it worked. Obviously, in reality, you'll only see a change the first time round, because once it's been changed to it worked, then changing it to it worked won't make any difference. So we'll only see it once, but this bit of code will actually be run every time the button is tapped. Let's check it out. Here we go. You can see the label text hasn't been updated yet, and then we tap the button and it worked. Fantastic. I hope that gave you a little bit of a jump of excitement when you saw that update, especially when you did it when you wrote the code, because you've done your first interactive app there. You've made your app respond to something that the user has done. So that's really exciting, I think, and it takes us almost to the end of this first section before we're going to dive into Swift much deeper than we have already. All we've got left to do is to create our first, I say useful, I don't know if it's that useful, but it is a fully functioning, at least, app which we're going to create in the next video.